Welcome everybody to the episode 2 of the Geetar Rob channel, the guitar channel for the rest of us. This episode is brought to you by the Chord B, a great chord. Hi everybody, hope this video finds you well, or at least finds you. If you remember in episode 1, we decided it'd be cool to learn how to play the guitar. And so the next step in our quest is to go out there and get us one of them thar guitars. Before I get started, I need to tell you that we have now expanded our hours for subscriptions. And so for those of you who haven't had a chance to get in and subscribe to the channel, like it, ring the bell, all that stuff, we're running a longer hour now. And you might want to go ahead and get it done to avoid any issues that might arise if you get stopped and you can't produce your Geetar Rob proof of subscription certificate. You don't want to run into that. So you strut down to your local guitar shop, and the friendly guitar salesman comes up to you. He says, "Hi, how can I help you?" And, well, you don't want to look like a total noob. You want to know something about what you're talking about. So what we're going to start off with is a crash course in the anatomy of a guitar. Here's a couple of guitars. There's an acoustic and an electric. Upon first inspection, the acoustic and electric look a lot alike, only different. So let's explore the commonalities and the differences on the different parts of various types of guitars. We'll start up at the headstock, which is might as well start at the top. So we're going to start at the top, called the headstock. It is built on the end of the neck, and here's one kind of neck, and it is the place where the strings are terminated and tuned. The strings are inserted to a tuning peg, which is connected to a tuning key through a little gear system, and it's used to rotate the peg in either direction to either tighten or loosen the string tension, and thereby either raising or lowering the pitch of the string. The whole assembly is called a tuning machine. Some headstocks have designs have half the strings on one side and half on the other, while others have all the strings on one side, and you might ask yourself, what's up with that? Well, some of the headstocks with the split strings had an issue where the two center strings could get stuck or bound in the grooves, binding in the grooves of the nut, because of the angle they come out of the nut to go to the tuning machine. And when this happens, you may tune a key a little bit to make a very small change to the string's pitch, and nothing happens. So you turn it a little more, nothing happens, a little more, nothing happens. Then suddenly it gets a big change, kind of pops and releases when the string tension gets high enough to overcome the binding of the nut. Now, not all headstocks have this issue with the 3-and-3 split, but some do. And this can be corrected by either having a skilled luthier, which is a guitar repair person, properly configure the nut, or you may find that just a tiny drop of a fine machine oil on the groove of the nut will provide enough lubrication to prevent the binding. Or you can just design the headstock in such a way that the strings follow a more straight path from the nut to the tuning machines. And here's one version of that, and here's another one. This solves one issue, but in some designs, not all, but in some designs it creates another little issue. Hence, on this guitar, you'll notice the little device called a string tree that's used to kind of secure the strings after the nut, because they could tend to buzz a little bit. Below the headstock we have the nut, and here's a nut there to the left. The nut is made of bone, metal, or plastic. It sits at the end of the fingerboard. It has grooves filed in it to keep the individual strings securely separated from each other and at a proper height above the fingerboard. Many nuts are set up by the manufacturer for specific string size or gauge that the guitar is going to be sold with. And if you decide to go with different, like thicker strings, you may have to have some modifications to the nut to accept the bigger strings. Back to guitar parts. Now we come to the neck. As we said, the neck is usually carved out of one or more pieces of wood, sometimes many that are kind of laminated together. Some of the necks have metal shafts embedded in them for reinforcement, and many have what's known as a device called a truss rod installed. The truss rod is used to adjust the neck to desired relief or flatness, which prevents the strings from buzzing and improves playability. A fingerboard is glued to the front of the neck and is divided into half note or semitone note segments called frets by fret wires. Fingerboards usually have dots or inlays placed on specific frets like the 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, or 12th, 15th, so on, that help the player easily identify their position on the fretboard. Necks may either be glued or bolted to the body of guitar. In some cases, they are a continuous piece of wood from the end of the body all the way up to the top of the headstock. Continuing down, we have the body of the guitar. And the acoustic guitar body is just essentially a big wooden box. And the electric guitar, most times, is usually just a plank of wood. The acoustic guitar's body reverberates string vibrations to produce the sound, while the electric guitar uses electronic devices called pickups that convert string vibrations into electrical signals that then travel through a volume and tone control and then sent through a plug into a cable and out to your amplifier where that creates the volume. The body of a guitar is usually an hourglass shape. The shape is made up of shoulders, the waist, and the hips of the guitar or the body. Common on both types of guitars is a bridge, which is the strings are initially anchored and they go up and over a saddle, which, like the nut, provides separation and elevation to the strings and also contributes to the intonation or the fret note tuning accuracy of the guitar. Let's look at some of the aspects of an acoustic guitar. Here's a blow-up image depicting the typical construction of an acoustic guitar. Good design, quality materials, skilled craftsmanship, and quality control make up quality guitars. Let's look at some different kinds of acoustic guitars. The first guitar here on the left is a classical guitar. It's used in classical and flamenco music. The classical uses nylon strings that produce warm, mellow tones and are easily on the fingers. But classical guitars usually have a pretty wide neck with wide frets that are difficult for players with smaller hands to play. Because they use nylon strings, many classical guitars don't have a truss rod in the neck, and a lot of the time they don't have the markings, the critical marks on the frets to tell you which fret you're on. In the middle is a typical acoustic guitar. They're used in folk music, country, bluegrass, and even in rock and roll. They have smaller neck than a classical guitar and use metal strings, which, due to the higher tension, necessitates the inclusion of a truss rod in the neck. The next is an arch-top guitar. Notice that it has F cutouts instead of a sound hole. Another difference is that the front of the guitar is rounded like a violin instead of flat on the surface like a classical or acoustic guitar. Some acoustic guitars have built-in electronics called preamps that enable them to be connected to amplification, and many of the preamps even include electronic tuners and tone controls. Here you see a representation of the different shapes of acoustic guitars. Different manufacturers may have slightly different names, but basically they are just variations in size of the hips, the waist, and the body, the hourglass shapes. Some are more hourglass shapes, some guitars are kind of thicker in the waist, and some kind of have a jumbo appearance. What you choose will be based on your style of music and your personal preferences. Also be aware that there are different sizes of guitars. There's the baby or parlor guitar, quarter size, half size, 3/4 size, and full size guitars. And there is even available a guitar chart that helps you kind of fit the size of the player to the size of the guitar, although I really wouldn't think it would be necessary to buy a guitar every time a youth grows a couple of inches. You might start them on a smaller size, say at 1/2 size, and then as they grow, get them a full size later on. Another type of guitar we talked about is the electric guitar, and we said they're usually a slab of wood that have embedded electronics used to produce sound. Although there are hollow body electric guitars that have some acoustic qualities. Electrics come in various sizes and body designs. Fender has a line of guitar designs that are copied by a lot of people, like the Stratocaster, the Telecaster. Gibson has the Les Paul, the SG, the 335, and so on. And some guitars have a pretty exotic shape, as you can see here. And of course, electric guitars are used in blues, rock, jazz, country, heavy metal, and a lot of different things there. Here are 3 more types of electric guitars. The red guitar on the left is a bass guitar. The bass guitars provide the deep tones that provide the bottom foundation to music, and also can provide a percussive effect, kind of like a bass drum. Most basses have 4 strings, although there are 5 and 6 string models. Flat, low-frequency strings on a long neck are characteristics of a bass guitar, although there are some acoustic versions too. The middle guitar is called a baritone guitar, and it fills the gap between 6-string guitars and bass guitars. The strings are thicker than regular 6-string, but thinner than a bass neck, or the scale length. It is shorter than a bass, but longer than a 6-string, which also is tuned differently. It's a specialty kind of guitar, and you may have heard this on the theme music to the Twin Peaks TV show or on Glenn Campbell's Wichita Lineman. Next we have the 12-string guitar, which is actually 6 sets of 2 strings. And the strings are all tuned to the same note, but after you get past the first small pair, the E and the B pair, the rest are a small string and a thicker string, as I said, tuned to the same note but at different octaves. They provide a very chorus-like effect, like you're playing 2 guitars at the same time. You've heard this if you've ever heard the Byrds recording of Hey Mr. Tambourine Man. Not sure what you'd like to get? Well, you can get a guitar with more than one neck. Here you can have you see a guitar with a 12-string neck and a 6-string neck. Or if you need more, how about this? Are there guitars that are more versatile, enough to cover more than one use? Well, there are guitars you can kind of use across different music genres, but I would say for the most part that you decide what kind of music you want to play, and you get the guitar that's meant for what you want to do with it. And so, that's a crash course in the anatomy of guitar. Tune in next time. What we're going to talk about is the characteristic between a really good guitar and a not so good guitar. And if you'll come back and check with us, we'd like to see you come back. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.